Hello. Today I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Thomas Morgenthaler, who is joining us from Sweden. He's an expert in the area of outdoor play and play spaces. We're going to be diving deeper into this topic, including recent research, his own research, and actionable takeaways you can implement right away. Welcome to Pediatric Pioneers, a MedBridge podcast where we conquer challenging topics for the pediatric therapist through conversations with pioneers who have blazed new trails in our practice. Our aim is to deliver actionable takeaways for practitioners like you. To receive continuing education credit for this episode and access bonus resources, make sure you check out medbridge.com. Hello, I'm your host, Nicole Quint, and I'm an occupational therapist with over 20 years of experience in practice and academia, specializing in pediatric practice and the improvement of occupational participation and performance through my expertise on executive function, visual perception, social-emotional learning, sleep, and sensory processing. It is my passion to support pediatric therapists like you so that you can best serve the families under your care with evidence-based practice solutions, easy-to-implement advocacy approaches, and new ways to lean into your skills within the challenging pediatric landscape. Welcome, Thomas.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks for having me today.
It's great to have somebody joining us from across the pond, right, overseas in Europe, and get a little bit of a different take on things that I think are going to be kind of exciting for our listeners to hear about, how you're thinking about things regarding play. So could you get us started by sharing a little bit more about yourself and how you became involved with outdoor play and looking at play spaces for children?
Yes, for sure. Before we start, I need to apologize a little bit. I have parrots at home, and we might hear them in the recording.
I think it's
So
kind
you,
of perfect though, since we're talking about outdoor play and play spaces in
yes,
nature. I
yes.
think it kind of adds a little bit. And also one more thing is that Thomas and I met many years ago, actually stateside, because we did a mentorship with the Star Institute many years ago.
Mhm.
And it's been fun watching your career blossom in the meantime.
Yes, that's true. That was in Colorado or Denver, and that's true.
Yep.
Okay, let me introduce myself. So I'm Thomas. I just finished or just graduated from my PhD program, what was in associated with University College Cork, Ireland, and in Ireland, and Queen Margaret University, Edinburgh, Scotland. So this was actually a funded PhD project under the European Union, and we were 8 different PhD students, and each of us focused on a different area of play. And my specific focus was on outdoor play, and more specifically on outdoor play on play spaces, with a specific focus of developing new tools that allow us to evaluate these play spaces. And I focused on the 2 different concepts of play value as well as usability. Um, Yes. And before that, yes, I did a research master's in the European Master of that's 5 different universities across Europe, and that's one of it's a very good master's program to start actually research in occupational therapy. And beyond that, I worked clinically as a pediatric occupational therapist in Austria for 5 to 6 years in different settings, outpatient clinics, private practice, as well as school-based occupational therapy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So why play spaces? What personally does that mean to you that you bring into your practice, into your research?
Yeah, I like that question because I always ask the people, okay, why is play important to you? And the first thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking about my play and my own play experiences as a child and in my childhood, I'm thinking about that I was actually exploring nature. I grew up on the countryside. I was lucky that we had the forest in the backyard. I basically was just in nature with my friends, my siblings, neighboring peers, so just exploring. And when I think about our current development in on our world, we know that we work towards more urbanization. We know that in 2023 we have a predictions that 60% of all children will live in our cities, and that's why play spaces become more and more important. And when you talk to your families as a clinician or as a practitioner, you will know that one of the important spaces in their lives are actually play spaces. Like it's they find them in schools, they find them in urban settings, and usually they visit them several times a week. It's something it's part of their daily life.
Yeah, this is a
So there.
big topic. Like you said, and it's so important. And, we all instantly go back to our childhood. I know I'm instantly thinking about my play spaces were pretty vast. I grew up in a suburb, but on the outskirts, so I had all this land to run around with my dog,
Nice.
and my friends on a bike, and we had all sorts of acres behind us, and, I had, like, a four-wheeler when I was a kid, so, yeah, I mean, I think that, being outside is so important, and sometimes it's not so easy for our families to do that, so I love that we're bringing this to talk about, how to bring it into practice. So,
Yes.
um, why do you think it's important to talk about play spaces and outdoor play for occupational therapists? What questions should we be asking? Because I know there's been a lot of research out there. There's been a lot of information coming at us from all different fields.
Hmm.
When we're working with the kids that we work with and the families, why is this important to discuss as a topic here, but also when we're in practice together?
Yeah. So there's actually quite a lot of research coming from Europe, but also from the United States. Like when we look at occupational therapists and how they think about play, and from that research, we actually know that occupational therapists and potentially also other therapists highly value play as an important part of childhood.
Mhm.
But it is very difficult for us therapists to actually live up to that beliefs. So, as occupational therapists, for instance, we using play for other means. For instance, we're using them to build abilities or skills of children. We use them to motivate them to do things we need them to do. Um, and so that there's a little bit a mismatch between like that we actually value play. We want to foreground it more, but like we actually have problems to live up to these beliefs at that stage. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's
interesting that you say that because I hear therapists when, one of the things that we are challenged with as a profession, particularly, I think it's maybe not as big of a deal in Europe as it is in the States, but the confusion about our titles. So we're often trying to explain what do we do as occupational therapists? What do we do with children? And I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, we use play to work on other things. Play is a means. So what you're saying is that form of the play as means is rather limiting. Like we might think that it's this expansive thing, but it's actually limiting because it's goal directed for us, right? Outcome directed, I guess. It's confining it to maybe a motivational piece or a reward piece or trying to build skills instead of actually letting them play.
yeah. Or like
So
when you
we're kind of missing the bigger picture.
Yeah, or what we sometimes miss is like more like focusing on the clients themselves, and most of all, our clients are the children, and what is important to them, what kind of play preferences do they have, and do we actually live up to that, or do we actually have other goals that maybe proxies like parents, teachers want us to work on with their child instead of actually focusing on, okay, what is important for this child right now, and like focusing on their aims and their goals, because often when you have a good relationship with them, you will come to like goals like, oh, I want to play with this or this peer during break times. Like this is actually a goal we can work on towards what is could be play focused and what should be
Mhm.
play focused. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, we appreciate how important play is. I know you had told me a little information about child right based perspectives under like the United Nations Convention. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So actually, the United Nations Convention for the Rights of the Children has actually a own article, Article 31, that focuses on play, also on leisure activity and cultural arts activities, but play is very central in that Article 31. And actually, the child rights, there's actually different associations around the world. For instance, the International Play Association, and there's also subgroups within different countries that try to actually promote play or like to foreground that and actually try to give advocate for play and actually try to also go away from that play as a means thinking to play for its own sake. And to do that, the General Command 17, that was an additional document created under Article 31 because state parties realized and NGOs realized, okay, we need to foreground play much more. And then you can, this general command was written to guide countries and NGOs better to advocate for play. And the three big pieces in this General Command 17 are actually three things. That is creating the space for play. So we need actually the physical space, we need the materials, we need the environmental qualities. That is a very important piece that we focus on that immediate environment that is just very important for children. What is there? What can I do there? We need to create enough time for play, thinking about the very busy schedules of our clients, from our families and also the children. And having an understanding like, okay, what is taking over, what is too much in their life time wise, or is there enough time for play? Actually, creating that time. And the last piece is also about like creating that permission or having that permission. Like we actually need to focus on the social environment, the attitudes. We need to reframing. We need to provide a better understanding to the caregivers, to the parents about play. Why is this important? Because when you ask them, when you ask a teacher or a parent, like they usually value play, but they also like you have a conversation with them. They say like, yeah, that is important for them. We want that they have free play or unstructured play and time and space for play. But often they like then slip into that, okay, but play is for learning or play is for that they're physically active. It is part of that. A lot of outdoor play is just physical active, and that is great because we need physical activity. But like at the same time, could it be more free, so that it's like actually then more towards that characteristics of play what we want, or what is very important for children.
Hmm. Or maybe the cultural mindset is play is just an opportunity to go burn off some energy, right?
Yes,
So I
yeah.
could come back and learn or focus on something instead of thinking about it as it has all these other qualities to it that are highly beneficial and important.
Yes.
Yeah. So under this Article 31, I think that am I correct that the United States is the only country that does not support the children's rights that you were speaking about?
That is true. Like the United States is the only countries who have not ratified the children's rights. Um, I can go into depth with that as well a little bit, but just to give you
Right.
understanding, like even the countries who have ratified the rights, it is like understood more as a process. So a country ratifies the rights, and then they have to, at a certain amount of period, they have to write a report to the United Nations. Then they have a hearing. Then after that hearing, there's also shadow reports from like NGOs and non-governmental organizations who can also give their input. And from
Mhm.
that all together, the United Nations creates a concluding observation that should guide the next steps for that specific country. So it's more seen as a process towards to that all different rights, and each country is in his own pace. So it's not like, okay, these are the rights and everyone needs to fulfill them. It's more really like a process that slowly evolves. And that is actually with all human rights from the United Nations. Like when we think about rights from persons with disabilities, it works in a similar manner with the United Nations.
But I think it informs the culture and the mindset, right? So I think we see some of that maybe coming through in how we're using play as a means, and perhaps there's some relationship there. So I think it gives us a moment to think about that, and how can we live up to our true beliefs that play is important and that it's an occupation that leads to health and wellness, and that we have to work really hard to make sure that the kids that we work with that have disabilities or that have medical needs have those same opportunities. And we are part of shaping that for them and the family. So I think this is
Definitely,
a
yeah.
really important
It's
conversation, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I want to get to your research. I know you've been really involved in research. I know that there's a lot of research coming out about play. We have some great studies to pull from, and it's got from all different walks of life. So can you share with us what does the recent research say, and give us some highlights of the most important takeaways with that research?
I can share something from my own work. And my own work focuses really specifically on outdoor play, on play spaces. And when we look at this specific research area, we know it comes actually from a lot of different disciplines. So that's not just occupational therapy and occupational science, where maybe we focus more on the occupation of play and different factors like the environment that influences that occupation of play. But like the research itself comes from a lot of different disciplines. So a lot of different professions are actually involved in play spaces, playgrounds. For instance, you can think about the obvious one like landscape architecture, but it also comes from play work, for instance. They are very centered, or a lot of play workers come from the United Kingdom, but it slowly spreads around the globe. Human geography or child's geography, environmental psychology, but also, for instance, policy work. So from all these different fields comes actually different play space research. Um, and what I'm focused like more in some of my studies, or studies specifically, what were like more systematic literature reviews. We focused specifically at what do children say, what do they want to do, what is important to them, what are their play preferences, and how is that linked to the environment, and how can we create actually the environments for play. So we did a systematic scoping review. We included there 51 different research papers from all these different disciplines between the years 1974 to 2022. And as I said, we really specifically focused on only papers that do not try to operationalize or see play as means like for physical activity or just for socializing or for health or even just restoration. Like we really focused on papers that was about guided by the child themselves. It was about free outdoor play. And it also used different methods, qualitative and quantitative methods that actually allow us to investigate that free play. Specifically, we focused in one paper about play experiences, like what children want to experience on the play space and how this is connected to the physical and the social qualities of the play spaces. And what we found out is that there is not one single play experience children want to engage with. There's actually different kinds, like multiple. For instance, we found that very important for children is the fun. Children want to have choices. They want to be challenged. Children want to have this very intensive play experiences, like you can think intensive motor experiences, but also like feeling, tactile play, getting messy maybe. Children want to also there's different kind of social experiences children want. Like most important, they do want to be with their peers. Peers, and in the sense of like that are children I can relate to, that are children, they have maybe the same interests, the same abilities even. I don't want to play soccer with the child who is much faster than me, like I want to have. It's some kind of also important. Some children in some ages also same gender, um, are relatable peers in that sense. Children, but also there was it's not just about being social. Sometimes it's also about being away from the others. Like there needs to be opportunities for restoration, for withdrawal. Children want to feel welcome. They want to feel secure when they are on the play space. We can unpack that also later, what that means. And all of that, like we focused on papers of children with and without disabilities, so we could find also that experiences. There's important experiences from, let's say, typical developed peers, and also children with who have disabilities, diverse disabilities. So, like that was not something that is could be just associated with one group or with a certain group. That was really across the studies we could find the different experiences.
So it's interesting how you talked about intense play. I think that's an interesting one that I think that doesn't necessarily get the attention. Can you explain a little bit more about what you found about intense play?
Definitely. So intense play was one of the themes that came out of our content analysis of the papers. I called it intense play, I have to say, but maybe in other research areas you will find the topics, for instance, of risky play from a researcher, for instance, from Norway, Ellen Sandseter, talks about risky play. Other researchers maybe talk about more adventurous play, like Helen Dodd in the UK. I called it intensive play because it has something to do with that really um, um, like the children want to be faster, but they also want to go slower. They want to go on longer opportunities, heavier opportunities, digging deeper, going over bumpier bumps when they go with a bike or down the sled, for instance. You want to be curvier or more elevated play, or even getting really messy. So it's about like this really intense experiences that we really found strong evidence that it is linked to the physical environment, because when we have that long slide down, or when we have that swing that goes super high, the children can experience that different opportunities. Or when you think about that swing that not just goes back and forth, but also you can turn, you can have different kind of inputs. So children actually seek that opportunities, and that was really interesting that you actually can somehow quantify that in the physical environment. So we can look at the physical environment and have an understanding there might be some novel intensive player experiencing happening in a play space.
Yeah, who doesn't love the high swing, right? You were always trying
Yes.
to kick your legs so you could go as high as possible and jump off. I used to love that. Um, yeah, so I think, when I hear you talking about this intensive play, I definitely think that's been overlooked. And I think about how you were talking about how important it is about the play space, and how the play space is important from an environmental standpoint, but also it's an opportunity for the child to connect with that um, play space and that play activity, and really have this sense of belonging in the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, exactly. So this was another theme that came out. In total, we got 5 or 6 theme, I think six, and feeling belonging to the play space. That was another theme that came out, and it was just interesting to get an understanding. Okay, how can we actually, or what do children think about belonging, and how it is connected to the physical and the social environment? Because you can think about um, how can I ensure a child feels belonging to a play space? You can think about, okay, how often do I visit this play space? Am I familiar with that play space? Is this play space in my school, in my neighborhood, where I know I'm going there very regularly? We know when we visit spaces more regularly, we feel connected to the space. Another example, we could also think about the social environment. Like, do I know the users of that play space? Are there my peers there? Do I know the people who take care of that space? Do they take care well of that space? Because children want that. They want that their play spaces, they feel connected to, that somebody takes care of them. And that's part of like feeling that belonging. Another example is also, and that came more from the studies of children with disabilities. Like, they talk a lot about, okay, do I feel welcome on a play space? Do I feel from the atmosphere? Do I feel safe on that play space? And specifically from children with disabilities, that had something to do with, like, are these play spaces accessible? Are they usable? And usable in the sense of, like, can I actually do something there, not just enter it, but I can also use the space, so I can actually play with it and engage with it. What kind of experiences did this child have in the past on the play space? Like, were there some othering experiences happening, like exclusion, bullying, even just gazing? So that's all like kind of experiences that will feed into that. Do I feel welcome on that space? And that's hard to measure, because it's an atmosphere. It's something that, like, we cannot really quantify. We can just like look at certain indicators of, like, for instance, okay, accessibility, usability, play value, that contributes to that atmosphere of a space.
So what I'm hearing from your work, from the research that's out there, because you pulled from a lot of different articles, um, that we have a lot of opportunity here as occupational therapists working with children to broaden our perspective of play and make sure that we're really thinking about play for play's sake, and having opportunities for kids to play in more of a child-led free play opportunity, have opportunities for intensive or, adventurous play. I like that term
Choices.
too. Choices, but also thinking about the play spaces and understanding that any play space that they have has opportunities for belonging and some kind of, place attachment potential. So if you're thinking about the family and their home, there's a play space there. Maybe they have an outdoor play space at their home. The clinic or hospital or wherever you're working with them, or the school has play space opportunities and affordances, but there's also potentially community opportunities as well. So it sounds to me like we have a lot of opportunity in helping to kind of broaden this opportunity for play for the kids that we work with.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, at that point, like, every practitioner, doesn't matter which therapist it is, if it's OT, PT, speeches, um, they could actually also go a little bit beyond their clinical practice, have an understanding, okay, what does my community already offer? What kind of play spaces do I have there?
Mhm.
Do we have the research? Go on this play space, get an understanding, does this play space potentially provides to that experiences that we just talked about? Potentially, we talk about potentially when we look at the physical environment.
Mhm.
How does this play spaces look like? Compare these different play spaces in your neighborhood and see, like, do they offer different opportunities? Are there actually users already on the space who use that space, or are there no users there? Sometimes you go to play spaces and there's for hours nobody there. Why is that? I
Mhm.
ask myself. Here also the important piece, like, if I'm living close to a play space, why I'm not visiting this play space? What are the potential non-users of that play space, and why is that? So that's would be very interesting future research to get an understanding of that non-users.
Mhm.
And so more or less what the conclusion is, and I'm not generalized that, but like often play spaces are not built with the users in mind. Like they are like usually just something that is in a city development plan, and we know like such square meters or whatever measurement you use in the States needs to be dedicated to children's play, and we have the standard play equipment there. We have a slide, a swing, a climbing opportunity. But is that actually what a play space should be? I would say no, because we want to actually create space for play, and that is one of the spaces we creating in our cities for play. Yes.
Well, I guess when I start thinking about it, I know you have a tool that you've created that you're working on. I know you talked a little bit about revising it, and we'll have these resources for people that they can access them. But so now that we're thinking about the playgrounds and things in the community or different opportunities, I think it's a good time to bring up the difference between accessibility and usability.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you share a little bit about that and do a comparison so that we can understand how they are not the same thing?
Yeah. So when you think about accessibility or access to a space, sometimes it's also called in other disciplines. You can think about, okay, getting to the space and getting to the feature, like to a specific play equipment, for instance. That's what you can think about accessibility. But accessibility does not necessarily mean that it's also usable. And when we talk about if it's usable, we talk about usability, and that actually goes beyond accessibility. It's more concerned about equitable use of the environment, and it comes closer actually to inclusion. So it is about getting understanding what a child with diverse abilities wants to do on a play space and actually adopt. That could be little things, that could be a knob there, that could be a handrail there. Like sometimes it's something very, very small. But we talk here about these environmental qualities that um, um, that come closer to the overarching goal of creating actually play spaces that enhance also play value, enhance like opportunities for play, enhance like affords children to play then with them, and not just getting to the equipment or to the space itself.
Hmm. Right. So that's a big difference. And I know we can always think about, accessibility is great, but if it's not usable, then it's
Yes.
almost it's a frustration point as
Yeah.
well, right?
It's like
Um,
getting there, and now what I do.
right. So
Yeah.
tell us, now that we kind of understand that difference, tell us a little bit about play value, because that's something else that you were talking about. And I want to make sure that we all understand what that means when you refer to play value.
hmm Yeah, usability and play value were the two concepts I tried to operationalize in the with the environmental characteristics that we can actually observe in the physical environment. And play value as a concept itself, it was is actually used in place-based research since a while. Like I did actually also concept analysis of that idea of play value to just get an understanding how it was understood throughout the history. And more or less the most recent one that I also adopted in the tool talks about or redefined play value as diverse, multiple, and potential play affordances supported by diverse, varied, and combined environmental features. And the central piece of understanding in that definition is play affordances or the concept of affordances. Um,
Mhm.
and let me briefly also discuss that or describe that a little bit because it's outside of the occupational therapy and more therapy scope, because it comes from ecological psychology and environmental psychology, and it looks actually at that understanding between play environment transaction. So James Gibson from ecological psychology and other research from environmental psychology, for instance, Harry Heft, describe a lot about these play affordances. And it's could be understood that it lays between the child and the environment. So it looks at the different environmental characteristics, but it looks also at like how does the child is, what is the past experiences of the child, what is also how does the what is the body composition of this child, like how big is it, how strong is it, and like you can. Affordances are always there in the environment, but we will or a child will just actualize an affordance when they actually match with that environmental characteristics. You can think about that a tree with branches down that are low hanging, and maybe a 2-year-old will not see the affordance of climbing on that tree. But maybe a 6-year-old who can already reach the branch will definitely engage in that play because like it's just a match between the child and the environment. And through that concept of affordances, it actually allows us to better understand that environment play transactions. And we used that idea to develop a new tool that was also published last year in the American Journal of Occupational Therapy. We called it the Environmental Taxonomy of Outdoor Play Space Features, and it allows us to connect, okay, what kind of environmental features do we find on a play space? What are the environmental characteristics of that feature, and what potential play could we find in the evidence literature that connects that, or what children engaged in that play. An easy example is like when you think about an open surface, open space, what has maybe a concrete surface. We instantly understood, okay, because of that sufficient solid surface, there may be biking happening there. But when there is now a grassed open surface, there might be more soccer happening on that space.
Right.
And more or less, we identified 14 different features, environmental features, that you as an occupational therapist or a therapist can easily take that environmental taxonomy to a play space, understand, okay, what kind of features are on that play space provided, look at the environmental characteristics, and then you can anticipate, oh, potentially this kind of play will happen there. What allows us also to anticipate, okay, what is the play value of that space? That was the idea behind that
Oh, it's a great tool. I mean,
taxonomy.
yeah, that's really helpful for people that are practicing, to go out and look at that and see what's available in the community, help families understand some of the opportunities or, like you said, the affordances that exist at the local play space, or playground, and things like that. So, and I know you have the playground play value. That's another tool that you have as well?
Yes, exactly. So the environmental taxonomy of outdoor play space features is more or less builds the evidence base of another audit tool that is currently in development. We called it the playground play value and usability audit tool. So that two different concepts of play value and usability, we try to operationalize it. And more or less what this tool is about, it's could be understood like as an capability building tool. So it will be divided in two different sections: an interview as well as a physical environmental audit piece. The interview, for instance, is about with a person who is managing, upkeeping the play space to get a better understanding of the history of the development of the tool, of how it is managed, because like how we manage a play space is also very important. Thinking about, okay, seasons, new loose parts coming into a play space that children can engage in. How do we work with the vegetation itself? Like, is it actually meant for play or not? Does this has something to do with management rather than just being there? Um, and the second piece, like, is really focusing more on this environmental taxonomy, what I've already elaborated, what really focuses on this play value pieces and the physical environment, and how we can link it to these intensive play experiences, that social opportunities a play space provides, and the different kind of play, what potentially is provided on a play space.
Okay. Well, thinking about the usability, so we have this concept of usability, we have this play value, we're thinking about play spaces. So, how do we need to think about the different populations that we work with as occupational or physical or speech therapists? For example, children with mobility aids or wheelchairs, or children who have sensory needs, or other, maybe they even have social challenges due to language development delays. So, how do we need to think differently about these kids that we work with so that we can help to ensure that they have the access um, to outdoor play, play spaces, meaningful play, um, but also just even, making sure that they have this positive interaction with the play spaces that they're encountering.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult because when we look at community spaces like play spaces, we always think about, okay, we look at this full spectrum of different children, different potential,
Mhm.
different users, and in my opinion, no play space will be perfect for everyone. When I just think about different age groups, like the very little ones have different needs than the older children, what are sometimes not even catered for, because the play spaces are anyway already boring for them, and we need to create more intensive play experiences for them. But more unless we can, what I believe the future might be is that we have that there is in each community, on each and in each neighborhood, there's play spaces for each of that users. And that means, again, we need to engage with that users. We need to get an understanding what are their play experiences, what is important for them. And sometimes as therapists, we don't even know that. Like, for instance, what is climbing for a child in who uses a mobility devices? Climbing for this child maybe is just being lifting a little bit out of the wheelchair. So we need to think about, okay, how do we actually provide these climbing opportunities? Are they just going straight upwards, vertical, or do we also provide like some more horizontal climbing opportunities for them? I'm also like to talk a little bit about like access to nature
Mhm.
with that kind of clients, because it does not matter which kind of diverse abilities they have, these clients, but usually they don't have a lot opportunities to engage with nature, and play spaces can actually provide that. So we can also think about in their design how we can create shrubs or the trees close enough to maybe a elevated platform where everyone can access to, but it's close to a tree that a child actually feels like I'm in the tree. This kind of opportunities where I can also touch the leaves, where I can engage with it also, not having that nature opportunities outside of the space and the features are fenced in, but actually including that more in our play spaces, because that is another um, important piece. And when I go on a play space, it does not matter where, children seek that opportunities. They go to the flowering bush, get it, take the flowers, take the leaves. They wanted to engage with it, even if it's outside of the play space, for instance.
Mhm.
Um, and like, I mean, again, you named some specific client groups. One thing I might mention also, like for instance, there's children who need to withdraw, who need restoration. Does a play space provide that? Like, think about
Mhm.
placement of seating in shade, in more nature environments, made something a seating opportunity that is specifically just for one child.
Mhm.
What is I always call it like my space in a space, like I kind of can control it. Like, we
Mhm.
can think about the design of play spaces also in that way, that like we need to really careful think about placement and where something is, and intentionally design that, because we have the evidence that children actually will seek that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And those are things, even if I'm an occupational therapist bringing a child to a park or to a playground, I could create something like that that's temporary for in the moment that they could learn to use and help the family as well. That kind of brings me to the idea of, um, how can we help therapists kind of, the idea here is, wow, it would be amazing if OTs were more involved in helping to create playgrounds and we had the kids and the families' voices and all of that. But right now we have what we have, right? So as OTs, we have to be creative and think about how do we kind of make this work for the families that we work with and the kids that we treat. So, when I think about the challenge of outdoor play, um, within pediatric practice, and I think about therapists who are usually in a clinic space or a school, or maybe they're in the hospital. They have very tight schedules, right? And they might have limited access to outdoor space or just even opportunities for that. How can we work around these challenges to help the children that we treat access the outdoors, really understand how to look at play spaces or help the
Uh-huh.
family understand the play spaces or ourselves as well, and look at things in a therapeutic manner beyond just the play as a means, but
Uh-huh.
actually the play as the outcome. And how do we bring parents into that mix?
And I think what you address here is just also the problems that we are sometimes confined to our clinical setting, our goals we need to fulfill in our workplaces. I think one piece everyone can do with us when we work with children, we work with the client system. So we do work with the caregivers, the parents, the teachers. And one way to do that is also to reframe their way of thinking about play, giving them an understanding, okay, why is play important and why is free play important for a child? How do I identify that my child plays now freely? How do I teach parents also to get an understanding it's play is not always about learning something, that sometimes playing is about, okay, stepping back and let just the child do whatever the child is doing, even if it's silly for us, but this is still play for the child. So advocate for them, educate the caregivers also,
Mhm.
live up to the beliefs of play occupation is important in childhood. One easy example I always give to practitioners is to just reflect about your own childhood, what was important to you as your play. Use such kind of examples also to dig into the beliefs of the parents, what was important to them as a child, and definitely you can connect in that way and actually reframe play in a different way. And then again, think about time. Look at the time schedules of your clients. Think about where is actually space for free play. Where's actually space and time to go outside? What kind of environments are close to your practice? Get an understanding of that, for instance. Are there opportunities for yourself to engage more with the community? Are there opportunities to actually bring your practice outside sometimes? We all have ideas for more inclusive play opportunities. An easy example could be once a month, bring your practice outside, bring some very a nice inclusive play opportunities with you. That could be just a bubble machine, or that could be bring some loose parts, bring some fabrics to a play space, bring some other hoops, balls to a play space.
Mhm.
All these kind of things are very, very neutral play opportunities that bring some novelty into the space, and will definitely attract different children. What is a very inclusive way of engaging with the community and with the parents, the children who use the space regularly. That's just some examples I can think about. Yeah.
Yeah, and those kinds of objects have a lot of affordances too, which is nice. And I know you're recommending to make sure that you understand the play preferences of the children. But I love how you talked about asking the parents about how they played, because I think that's a huge opportunity for us to make that connection and kind of open up their thinking with the kids as well. It's hard when they're just kind of in the schedule and trying to get everybody to therapy, and sometimes we kind of got to take a pause, step back, and kind of open
Yes.
up that aperture a little bit, right? So that's some really great advice. So, you know what I like to always talk about for the therapist is how can we um, really maximize this information. So, when we're thinking about all this information that you've been sharing between the research and all the suggestions, what would be your top 3 actionable takeaways for therapists to put into practice?
Mhm. So I'm always thinking about, okay, play occupation itself. And I think when we think about, the first thing is like that the environment is the key. So we need to think more clearly about the environment. We need to think about the physical, the social environment, but also the play culture of certain beliefs around play. So we need to think about environment. Again, the three important pieces is space and objects, time, and the permission for play. The second piece maybe is about the child themselves. That is about groups of children or the individual child understanding their play preferences. We need to have an understanding. And I think there's not a good tool right now out that allows us to investigate that. So that's really more like some qualitative work we need to do. Maybe it is some like really participatory observation we can do together with the child. Just like let them play freely, get an understanding of them. Also get an understanding that it does not need to be a high functioning kind of play. When we think like, okay, they're doing role play or something, maybe it is about letting the sand fall down on the floor and this is their play and I like how it looks in the sun. Or stepping into the puddle and out and back and forth. And I do that for 15 minutes. When a child is engaged in that, this is their play. So also value that kind of play that we may be not seeing as high functioning or a play that is maybe has some clear learning or something behind it. So like really try to value that as well and foreground that with the parents. And again, in the end, when we talk about play, we need to keep foregrounding play for the sake of play, and that has something to do with like educate and advocate for it. So that is about something we need to talk about it. We need to live to our beliefs that this is something important in childhood. That play is important for our well-being, for our health, and that it has a lot of different other benefits. What is great, what we can use for arguing, it is more physically active. We know it is good for our mental health. So we can use that arguments, but then at the same time understanding, okay, now it is about the child directs the play, the child leads the play, the child initiates the play. So think about that kind of way of thinking when we think about play occupation.
I love the part about giving permission. And it might sound kind of, I don't know, easy to overlook or might not sound that important, but to me, that's that bigger cultural piece. And that's the part where the child is allowed to just kind of do what they want to do, have some fun with it. There's no goal in mind. But I think something that we can do with the families is give them permission to give permission, not only to the child,
Yes,
but to
exactly.
themselves,
Yes.
because not everything has to be, okay, I got to work on this because, and I think, when we're thinking about home programs, I'm thinking about a home program for the family, throwing into some free play, have fun with no goal attached to it is something very simple to implement that could have a profound impact.
Yes.
Because that permission, I think,
Like
is
um
huge.
yeah, like kind of like build, how do you say, it's not advocate, but like empower them, empower the
Yes.
parents, empower the
Mhm.
caregivers, like let them, it's okay, this is
It's
important, we
okay.
need to let them. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to be working on something 24/7.
Yes.
So I think that's really a powerful takeaway. So we have just a quick minute left here. I wanted to say, what are some of your final words of wisdom or inspiration that you would like to leave with our listeners about this topic?
To wrap up that, final words of wisdoms, like i do I do think when I know that therapists value play. And I do, like the last 4 years, for instance, when I was really engaged in the literature and get a better understanding of play, it totally transformed how I would now do my practice. Like I would
Mhm.
completely do different practice. So it's really valuable to get an understanding of play itself, what it means to children, and really from a child perspective, seeing it from that perspective. I think that is a very valuable learning every therapist should focus more on, because in teaching or in our education, often it's overlooked because we have other goals or other needs that our profession needs to fulfill. But like from a child perspective, it's about having fun, and therapy should be that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I know you said something that I thought was really important, was that play can and should belong to everyone. So it makes me think too that as adults, we've probably gotten away from play and maybe we should get back to it as well. But that's a whole different topic, right?
And I don't know, I'm still the belief adults don't play. It has a change that then it's more goal directed, or like it has a different quality than when children play. Like when you look really at the child and it's really engaged in play, like everyone can identify play. Like when you see a child, you see this child is playing, we can name it. But like for adults, I'm not convinced that we play.
Yeah, we've gotten away from that. Well, thank you so much. That's all the time that we have for today to talk about this topic. I know we could have probably talked about a lot more, but I think we had some really powerful points about the play and how we look at play and how we can bring play to our families. So thank you so much, Dr. Thomas
Yes.
Morgenthaler. And thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us from across the sea over there. And make sure that you check out all the information that Thomas has shared. And thanks again.
Yes, and reach out.
Sounds good.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Pediatric Pioneers by MedBridge. Please be sure to subscribe and listen to more of our episodes on Spotify or on your favorite podcast platform and at medbridge.com. If you're listening outside of the MedBridge catalog and would like to access the bonus resources and receive continuing education credit, simply log into your MedBridge account and complete the quiz for this episode. Pediatric Pioneers also listens to you. If there is a particular practitioner that you'd like to hear from, or if you have a question or challenge that you'd like to explore on this podcast, please let us know by leaving a comment on our Instagram posts or by emailing podcast@medbridge.com.